In the front. Good. My dad's not here today, and Gelman's not coming for a little while. So, good. Come here. Welcome. Nice to have everybody here. Shabbat shalom. Welcome, welcome. It's nice to see you here. Shabbat shalom. So this morning, after Torah study, in case you'd like to stay, there's actually a very interesting service this morning. It's there's no bar mitzvah. We're just going to daven, and then for Musaf, Cantor Baron, and the musicians have prepared a beautiful musical service, a meditation service. For the whole congregation. So a very quiet, thoughtful meditation musaf. That'll be this morning, and following that there'll be some sort of kiddush. And then Torah study, the Parsha study this afternoon. This week is Thanksgiving, so we wish everybody a very happy holiday. There's not a lot of events in the synagogue over the week. If you want to come during the daytime, it's adorable because the kids all have their little Thanksgiving celebrations. And they dress up. The nursery school kids make up their own costumes. They're either pilgrims or natives. And the natives come in various tribes, Vons and Gelsons and Krogers. They make up these costumes out of little paper bags, you know. And I'm from the Kroger tribe, you know. Food for less, you know. But they're adorable. And then, of course, Thursday we wish everybody a very happy, sweet Thanksgiving. And then, of course, because we're a conservative synagogue, we celebrate 2 days Yontif. So Friday is also a holiday. And it is, of course, a custom in our community to go to the mall on Friday. And start your Hanukkah shopping, and good luck. Next Shabbos we will be on. It's the weekend of the holiday, but we will have Torah study in the morning. Torah goes forward. Yes, please. The Israel... At the Israel Film Festival at the Lemley. Right. A couple of other announcements of other events. We have enough Chumashim? We have Chumashim? If not, we'll get some more. I don't know where they disappear to week. That's the damn thing. The week after, we have a number of events that week. We sort of start all over again. On Monday night, the 27th, we're having one of our political programs. We have a conversation with 3 of the founders of the Republican Jewish Coalition. The official title of the program is American Conservatism, the Republican Party in the Age of Trump. I like to call it the elephants in the room. But they wouldn't let me put that on the flyer because it wasn't like dignified enough. But no, these are 3 very, very thoughtful fellows. Larry Greenfield and Bruce Bolofsky and Arnold Steinberg are very, very thoughtful fellows who have been founders of the Republican Jewish community. Coalition. Come in, sit, yeah. And then will tell us, come in, move over, everybody make room, bring chairs, come on. So please cut, that's Monday the 27th at 7:30, it's free and we serve cookies. We'll serve conservative cookies, so, you know. But please come, it'll be a very, very informed conversation, serious conversation. And then on the Thursday of that week, we have a joint program with Americans for Peace Now. And they're bringing Amir Tivon, who is the Haaretz Washington correspondent. If you read Haaretz, which is a very important Israeli newspaper, he's their Washington guy. And he'll tell us about how Washington looks through the eyes of Israelis and the eyes of Israeli political leaders, and the relationship between Israel and America in these days. Very important conversation as well. And then one more thing to put on your calendar, because I can't stop. The second weekend in December, which is December 14th and 15th, is Rabbi Shulweiss's yahrzeit, and we'll commemorate that yahrzeit, commemorate his life and his work with a weekend with a scholar, and we're very fortunate this year that the scholar will be Rabbi and Mrs. Yitz Greenberg, Yitz and Blue Greenberg. Yitz Greenberg is, to my knowledge, the greatest living Jewish philosopher. And he's just finished his magnum opus. It's a piece we've been waiting for many years called The Triumph of Life. This is post-Holocaust Judaism. Yitz is a marvelous teacher, deep, deep thinker, Orthodox rabbi with a tremendous sense of the Jewish community. His wife, Blue, is equally renowned. She's the founder of Orthodox feminism and really has been the leader in the Orthodox world of moving the Orthodox world to a recognition of women's role in Jewish life. And so we'll have a number of opportunities to learn with all of them. Friday night, there'll be a session with them. You can either come for dinner or just for dessert and then learn with them. Shabbos morning, Yitz will do Torah study with us. Blue will be the speaker at the Neshama Minyan. And then after shul, we will gather for a Shabbat shiur and learn together. And then that evening we'll have a Malava Malka. It's a Havdalah. We'll do Havdalah together, have a light meal, and another opportunity to learn with them. So it's a wonderful weekend with two of the most thoughtful Jews in the world, and a very special opportunity for all of us. So please come, put that on your calendar, okay? And it's Thanksgiving, which is the American Pesach. You know, it's I don't think it's Sukkot. It's sort of Sukkot in terms of Thanksgiving, but the idea that you have this is the story that carries the American myth. And the American myth is the story that unites us. Because you're going to sit down at a ritual table, a table laden with ritual foods, no matzah and maror, but instead you'll have turkey with stuffing, cranberry sauce, yams, little marshmallows on top, green beans with those fried oniony things on top, cornbread, pumpkin pie, pecan pie. This is what you have in a traditional American home. I mean, you know, Ashkenazic American home. Yeah. Well, there is a sort of Seder. I mean, and then you got to tell, then you got to tell the story. And it goes like this. It goes, in the year 1620, you might use a different melody because you might be Sephardic, but in the year 1620, our pilgrim ancestors left the tyranny of England and crossed the mighty Atlantic in a rickety ship called the Mayflower. All of us came from tyranny. All of us fled tyranny and made the journey from tyranny to freedom. That's the American journey. All of us came from someplace else, and we were seeking freedom. We were seeking the redemption of a free land. We came to this land, and we found it forbidding. And out of the bush came the natives who helped us survive, because this land was always interpreted as a promised land. This was a promised land, and it was by the grace of providence that we survived in this land. And we gather year to year to celebrate the bounty of this land. Come in, there's room, sit. Jews, come in. I'm sorry, come on in. Never you should be left out. Careful. And we celebrate the promise of this land and its freedom, and that's what this holiday is really about. And the most important, I like to point out that to me, the most important significance of the holiday is what they called themselves. They didn't call themselves refugees, which is what they were. They didn't call themselves illegal aliens, which is what they were. They didn't call themselves immigrants even. They called themselves pilgrims. To be a pilgrim is to move from a place of lesser sanctity to a place of greater sanctity. To move from a place of oppression to a place of redemption. To seek the presence of the divine. To seek the presence of God in a new place. That's what a pilgrim does. And to make a pilgrimage is to come closer to God. Janice, do you want a better seat? No, I'm good. You're squished in. That's okay, I'm good. We separate husbands and wives in this shul. Never, it's terrible. Come, there's a place over here. If there's right over here. You can sit behind Benny and hit him on the head. No, come on, we're good. We're good. We love you. It's okay. It's all right. So be sure when you sit with your family to tell the story. And what we used to do in our family, which was our family custom, is that on Thanksgiving as well as on other holidays, we would force our older relatives to tell the stories of how they came to America. And for kids who had grown up in American suburbia and in American freedom, to hear the story of what it was like in Poland and Romania and Russia and Lithuania, and the tasks of coming and the Lower East Side, these were very important narratives. And there are few of us left who have those narratives to tell. And if not, you don't have the narratives to tell directly, then have someone share the narrative that the grandparent or great-grandparent told them. Because these are the narratives that make this country great. I mean, you have to understand that this is a gift. That's what the holiday is. That's what the holiday is about. You have to understand that this sense of gratitude and appreciation and wonder that we even get to live under these circumstances. Because, I don't know, I've become a big patriot in my old age. Because I've studied enough Jewish history to realize how unique this circumstance is. That I am the first generation of Jews to live in the diaspora in 1800 years and not to fear a knock at the door in the middle of the night. My mother had a different attitude. My mother was raised by immigrants. My mother was kicked out of an apartment when she was 5 years old in Brooklyn because they couldn't pay the rent. I mean, my mother knew eviction. My grandparents certainly knew terror. But I grew up with this idea that I could be anything I wanted to be, go anywhere I wanted to go, never felt in any way constrained by anti-Semitism. Yeah, I met anti-Semites in my life, but that's different than meeting anti-Semitism as a force that shapes your life. And this is something that's just completely unique in the history of the Jewish diaspora. And if you don't express it with a sense of wonderment to your kids, they're never going to get it. So eat the turkey, be my guest, and the stuffing and the cranberry sauce and the cornbread and all the others, but tell the story. Take a moment and tell the stories, because that's what makes the holidays sacred. Not just the gobbling of the food, but and the football, but to take the time to tell the story. There was an interesting thing on NPR this morning. The Washington football team, which goes by the appellation the Redskins, are hosting the Thanksgiving game. And Scott Simon, who's the NPR guy, was interviewing some sports guy this morning and saying, how can they do that? I mean, have they no shame, to host the Thanksgiving name and have that as your moniker? It's just, there's something like wrong. But this becomes a sensitivity to who we are, what this place means to us. Anyway, thank you for coming this morning. Good morning, good Shabbos, good night. This morning we have one of the most delicious narratives of the Torah to share, and it has great significance. So open, if you would, please, to page 146. Hope everybody's well. If you don't have a chumash, just listen. I'm going to tell it anyway, but it'll help if you have a chumash, because we're going to do a little investigating. This is an exercise this morning in family therapy. We are going to welcome a family right here to us, and we're going to interview all 4 members of this family, because all 4 members of this family have stories to tell, and the confrontation between them is decisive, not just for the narrative, but for the history of the people. Because as you'll see in just a moment, this is not just the story of 4 literary characters. It's not just the story of 4 individuals. It's a prediction, it's a prophecy, or rather, it's a mythos. It's a capturing of the ethos of a people and how it exists in the world. So look with me on page 146. Ve'ela Toldot Yitzchak ben Avraham. This is the story of Yitzchak ben Avraham. Poor Yitzchak only gets one brief notice in the Torah. Abraham gets 3 Torah portions. He gets Lech Lecha and Vayera and Chayesar. It's all about Abraham. Yaakov, Jacob, gets the rest of the Torah. I mean, the rest of Genesis, at least. The rest of Genesis is Jacob's story. Isaac appears on the stage for one scene, bows and leaves. This is the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern of the Torah, because he is the transitional figure. I once had to write an essay on this for the newspaper, and I said, Isaac is the first Jew, not Abraham. Everyone says Abraham's the first Jew. No, Abraham had it easy. All he had to do is discover God. Isaac had to figure out, how do I live with my father, and how do I live with my kids? What do I do with the traditions and ethics of my father? How do I inherit a religion from my ancestors? And what do I transition to my kids? That sense of transformational ethic, that imperative to transmit this something from the past to the future belongs to Isaac. And this is his story. This is the only Torah portion where he's going to really have anything to say. We're going to talk about him in a minute, so don't leave him, right? Avraham holided Yitzchak. Avraham gave birth to Yitzchak. Now, why was that important? Because remember, Sarah kept getting captured. Remember Sarah? First she had an incident in the house of Pharaoh, and then, he did it again to her, and she was in the house of Abimelech, the king of the Philistines. So just to make sure that you know that he's the genuine article, it tells you, yeah, Abraham was Isaac's father, not the pool boy, okay? Okay, not the newspaper guy, right? Vayihi Yitzchak ben 40 shana. He was 40 years old when he took Rebekah, daughter of Bethuel, sister of Lavan. That's how you know he was Jewish, right? He lived at home with his parents till he was 40 and was unmarried. Okay? Isaac, Isaac pleaded with the Lord on behalf of his wife. She's barren. That seems to be the family curse. But Isaac does something that Abraham never did. Isaac prays for her. Abraham never prayed for his wife. He never asked God for a kid. He kept saying, I don't have a kid. God said, you'll have a kid. I don't have a kid. Isaac actually does something. He pleads. The problem is it's too effective, right? Be careful what you ask for. And the Lord responded to his plea, and she conceived, and they were twins. Mazel tov, right? A double blessing, right? But the children struggled in her womb. The Hebrew is vayitritzu, which is just a great word. It's just like they're wrestling in there. And she said, if so, why do I exist? Every woman who's having trouble, especially third trimester pregnancies, turns to her husband and in that sweet, gentle, giving voice says, you did this to me, you son of a bitch, right? Right? Every husband says, look, we're going to have a kid, you son of, right? For me, it was Chunky Monkey ice cream. I don't know what it was for you. But Nina woke up in the middle of the night. We were living in Dallas, Texas. It was the middle of the winter. It was 8 degrees outside. And she said, Chunky Monkey. I said, honey, in the morning, I'll be glad to, now! So I put on gym shorts, tennis shoes, and a parka and drove to the 7-Eleven at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I said to the man, Chunky Monkey. You know what Chunky Monkey is? It's this banana chocolate ice cream that Ben & Jerry's makes. And the man at the counter said to me, pregnant wife? Back corner left. She went to inquire of the Lord, and God said, 2 nations are in your womb, 2 separate people shall issue from your body. This is not just a narrative about characters. This is a narrative about people. And what I'm going to suggest at the end, and I'll tell you now because it'll be late by the time we finish, this is a narrative about who we are as a people. Who is Yaakov? Jacob is our namesake. We are his kids. We are B'nai Yisrael. So what they tell you about Yaakov, they're telling you about us. This is the formation of the national character. And who is Esav? Esav is going to become everybody else. Esav is going to become the rest of the world that we're going to interact with. And how we interact with the world, what we see when we see them, and what they see when they see us, is really all contained in this particular Torah portion. Look, you know that Jews have a particularly myopic, egocentric view of the world. We call ourselves Jews, and we call everybody else in the world non-Jews, right? There's 12 million of us, and 5.98 billion of them, but they're all non-Jews. I mean, growing up in high school, I had a very, very dear friend who was Chinese, and he once heard me use that phrase. And he said, oh, God, that's what I am. Now I know. My whole life I wondered what I am. Now I know. I'm a non-Jew. He says, it's wonderful. There's 1 billion of us, 10 million of you, but we're the non-Jews. Oh, that's cool. That's just cool. In Israel, it's the same thing. In Israel, the word for Israel is Aretz, right? You go into Haaretz, that's the name of the newspaper, Aretz, which means the earth or the land. And every place else is Chutz la'aretz, which means every place else. So you have a country the size of Connecticut, right? But every place else is Chutz la'aretz, right? Just to give you a sense of the proportions of our perspective, right? So here we have a conversation about who we are and who they are, and how they got to be they, and how we got to be we, and how much of how they got to be they is determined by how we got to be we. That's what the story is really about. So let's take a moment and consider 4 characters, shall we? Imagine you're sitting in Dr. Moses's family therapy office, and into our office come this family. These 4 characters, right? Isaac, Rebekah, Esav, and Yaakov. Got it? And they're going to sit down. I don't know how many of you have done family therapy. It's a real joy. And you sit down, and the doctor says to you, well, what? Tell me the story. Tell me each of your stories. Let's begin with Yitzchak. Shall we begin with Yitzchak? Tell me about Yitzchak. What do you know about Yitzchak? Come on, this is the family participation part. Well, before you get to that, start. No, actually, that's true. No. But see, Douglas's response is exactly right. Right. Your response is my response, is the pedagogic response. You would want to read the book in the right order. But Douglas's response is the psychologically true response. The most decisive event in the man's life was that moment when his father took him up to the top of a mountain, chained him to an altar, raised a knife over his heart. That will have an effect on a child. And I try to say, parents in our Hebrew school, please don't try this at home, right? That will have a rather decisive effect on a child's life, right? What effect will it have on a child's life? I mean, it doesn't take too much of a stretch of imagination to imagine that for the rest of his life, death is going to be his companion. He knew a moment when he thought he was going to die. And not just die, but die at the hands of his father, of all things.
Not being loved.
Right? It's not being loved, being sacrificed, being turned into an instrument of his father's faith, being turned into an object. He's going to, and so you're going to see what's interesting here, if it would just move ahead just a little bit, is of course that the story is going to begin. The major story here is the birthright story, the blessing story, and it begins when Isaac says to his son, if you look at page 153, chapter 27, right? Vayehi kezaken Yitzchak. Isaac was old, and his eyes were too dim to see. V'tichena einav miraot. So first of all, he's blind, and the Midrash immediately associates what Douglas's insight, which is the reason he's blind is because of that event. That there are things that a child sees that will render him blind for the rest of his life. Even the Hebrew is a very strange Hebrew. It says, Vitrena einav, his eyes dimmed, or his eyes closed, his eyes became dull. Miraot, from seeing. So the Midrash asks, from seeing what? And the answer, of course, is, when you're lying on an altar, chained down, and your papa lives a knife over you're seeing that. And then there's a much more beautiful Midrash, which is, of course, that Abraham is crying when he's doing this. And Abraham's tears fall into Isaac's eyes. And that's what renders him blind. And then there's another Midrash, which is even more profound, which is, sorry? Good? Which is that it's not Abraham's tears, it's the tears of the angels. The angels who were watching this, and the angels play an interesting role in the Midrash because they're the ones who can see the events without any of the sort of overlay of what this means. They just see a father about to murder his son, and the angels begin to cry, and the tears of the angels fall into Isaac's eyes, and that's what renders him blind. So this becomes the driving reality of his life. And even though he's not that old, he's going to live 20 more years after this. He says to his son, he calls his son Esav, and he says, here I am. Look at verse 2 on 154. Vayomer, hinena zakanti, I've grown old. Lo yadati yom moti. Lo yadati, I don't know, yom moti, when I'm going to die. Lo yadati yom moti. Right? I mean, that's all he can think about, is that he's going to die, because death is his constant companion. He lives in this world of darkness. And you get this image of Isaac from the rest of the story, that he's rendered passive. First of all, who chose his wife? Did he choose his wife? His son Jacob is going to go to Haran, fall in love with Rachel, end up with Leah, end up with 4 different wives. Don't try that at home, right? But he is completely passive. In fact, when we meet him, last week we met him, remember? He was wandering around the field. Either in a sense of, if you read that in a positive way, he's deep in meditation. Because a man who has experienced that closeness of death at the hands of his own father is going to spend the rest of his life wandering the world going, who am I and what the hell just happened to me? And at the same time, it might even be just a sense of being lost, but the passivity that everything is brought to him. Abraham is a subject. He acts. Jacob is a subject. He acts. Isaac is an object. He's the object of his father's passion. He's the object of his wife's manipulation. He's the object of his son's drama. There's no action there. He sits alone in a tent in the dark. That's the image you get of this man. In other words, in a certain way, he died on that mountain. A part of him died on that mountain. And what's left is a shell of a man. The only thing we know about, I'll be right with you, the only thing we do know about Isaac is a story we haven't read, which is right in between here, which is a story about wells. He digs wells. Now, for just a moment, first of all, water, of course, has a very important role to play in the Bible. Water represents life on the one hand and chaos on the other, right? Digging wells. What's that a metaphor for? Digging wells. It's an interesting metaphor because usually religion is, at least Western religions, are phrased in terms of vertical metaphors. Our Father who art in heaven. You always look up. Where's God? Ask any kid. Where's God? Heaven is up. What do you say about a guy who spends his life digging wells? He's going deep. He's going inward. Digging the well. And sometimes he's actually, the interesting thing is he redigs Abraham's wells. He redigs Abraham's wells, meaning that he goes back to his father's sources of passion, trying to figure out what this means. He's inward. This is a man who's inward. It's a man who lives in the shadow of death. I mean, walking in the valley of the shadow of death really is Isaac. This is who he is. And we don't know, what is he capable of understanding? What is he capable of understanding? This man who lives in this world of death. All right, let's stop. Someone had a hand up. Yes, please. Vakasha.
Reading the text.
Ken.
Lo yadati yom moti.
Yeah.
To not be a natural thing as we are today. As we grow older, we gather our kids and we tell them things that we would like them to know.
Yeah, that's a natural way to do it. I think it's deeper than that, though. Lo yadati yom moti. Just think of that phrase for a minute, right? I don't know when, if, how, the time of death. I mean, it's a strange thing. Abraham doesn't do this. Abraham doesn't gather Isaac together and say, I don't know when I'm going to die, let me give you Jacob does this at the end, but Jacob is mamish dying when he does it, right? Here's a guy 20 years before he dies.
Yeah, but he refers here, the text refers that he's zaken, that he's already old.
Yeah, but how zaken can he be? He's going to live a whole nother generation. I'm not disagreeing with you. Of course you're right. I just read this differently. Here is a man obsessed with his death because he had this traumatic experience in his childhood. And the traumatic experience has left an impression on him. And that defines him. It defines him. And it's going to define his relationship to everybody. And the irony, of course, is his name is Yitzchak, which means laughter. And the one thing he doesn't ever do, ever. You get a lot of tears, but you don't get a lot of laughter here. There's something like this laughter, meaning laughter is a life-affirming act. Laughter is a way of stepping out of the flow of time and looking at it and gaining a sense of its hilarity, its ridiculousness, its joy. And he's a man who can't do that. I don't know, did anybody ever meet somebody like that? You ever meet someone who's just incapable of laughter? Yes. This sort of depressive, deep, sometimes they're actually deep. I mean, in our culture, in our culture we associate, especially in the artistic world, you associate deep people with depressed people, right? You very, very few like really, really smart, deep people are like, hey, most likely is a brooding intellectual, right? Brooding intellectual, deep people. But that's who he is. He's this brooding inward intellectual, spiritual seeker. And the question he's left with his whole life is, why me? Why did you do this to me? Why was I, why, what, where, right? The only thing you get is that when he moves in with when Rebecca comes, and he moves into, of all places, his mother's tent, because right after the sacrifice, his mother dies, and she's his connection to life, right? She's his connection to life, and Rebecca comes and bonds with him, and that's the only sort of like comfort you get out of this. But now Rivka's going to change. We're going to see her in just a minute. She's our next victim. Stephen, go ahead.
First, in the book that Rabbi Wolpe wrote about David, is there a section on Isaac?
No, it's about King David, that book.
No, I thought it was they were writing a series.
No, there is I mean in the series.
Yes.
No. There's one on Jacob and there's one on, I don't know if there's one on Abraham. There's one on Jacob.
Okay.
And there's one on Moses. The Yale University has a beautiful series of books now called Jewish Lives. There's many of them now. And they run the gamut from biblical characters all the way through Jewish history into modernity. And some of you were with us on Wednesday night. We had Rabbi Wolpe. He wrote the one on King David. Beautiful book. It's a beautiful book. And as you could tell from his teaching Wednesday night, there isn't one on Isaac. It would be a very short book, too.
That's what I was curious.
Oh, yeah. No, it would be a very difficult book to write. If you want to read a really interesting meditation on Isaac, so there's a wonderful biblical scholar named Aviva Zornberg. Okay, she's a brilliant biblical scholar who's in Jerusalem, travels the world. She's British, so she writes English really well. And she wrote a book on Genesis. And this chapter, Toldot, on Genesis, is worth, I think it's the beginning of desire is the name of the book. It has a sexy title. Yeah.
But the next question, again, I keep hearing there's a midrash that Isaac invented either Musaf or Mechamayra.
Oh, all right. So as long as you mention that, so I'll show you where that is. That's actually apropos of our next comment. So come with me back to the end of Chaye Sarah. We're going to go back a Parsha, if it's okay, all right? It's a little before that. Turn to page 137. This is last week's Torah portion. Now we're going to switch. I'll get to your comments. We're going to move to Rebecca now. Tell me about Rebecca. What do you know about Rebecca? Rivka. Mama Rivka. So we have this brooding, blind man, Isaac, who lives in the proximity of death all the time. What do we know about his wife?
She's very kind.
Where does she come from?
The old country.
She comes from the old country. She's an old-fashioned girl, back from Mesopotamia, right? Okay? She knows how to cook cholent, okay? Important, right? And she comes from the old country, and the servant, Abraham's servant, went back last week. We were together. Abraham's servant went back and handled. He didn't really handle. He paid them whatever they asked for. And once the family agreed to the deal, if you take a look here, look at 137. When Abraham's servant heard their words saying they were willing to go, willing to give the family back in Mesopotamia was willing to give him Rivka to marry, he bowed low to the ground. He brought out silver and gold and garments and gave them to Rebekah. And then he and his men went with him to eat and drank, and they spent the night. And when they arose in the morning, he said, "Give me leave to go to my master." But the brother and her mother said, "Let the maiden remain with us 10 more days, then you may go." And he said to them, "Don't delay me. Now the Lord has made my errand successful. Give me leave, that I may go to the master." And they said, "Let's call the girl and ask her." I mean, what an interesting thing. The family says, "Give us 10 more days, then we'll let you go." And you can imagine what their motives were. Nothing good, right? Nothing good. But the servant says, "I got to bring him home. I got to get this girl home. That was my mission, and I want to complete my mission." So at the moment of truth, they say, "Well, we'll just ask the girl," which is really bizarre. Like, when do you ever ask a girl what she wants, right? When does she ever have a voice in any of this? But they bring her forth, right? And they present her. Now, what is she being presented with? Leave Mesopotamia, leave your home, does this sound familiar to anybody? Leave your family, leave everything you know, go with this stranger back to the wasteland of Canaan, where you're going to marry, and you're going to marry a man you've never met, and your fate, you're going to meet a fate which you can't begin to imagine. Does this sound a little familiar? It's the Abrahams. Right. It's the same Abraham story all over again. Right? It's exactly right. It's Lech Lach. It's the Abraham story all over again. And she does something really amazing. She says, "I will go." They called Rebekah and they said, "Will you go with the man?" Now, what is she supposed to say? No. She's supposed to say yes, but only in 10 days. That's the family line, right? But she resists the family line, and she says, I will. I'll go. Will you go with this guy? V'tomer elech. One word. I'm going. Literally, I'm out of here. She's got spunk. She's got guts. She's got some. Even Abraham didn't say that, remember? When God says, Lech lecha me'artzecha me'eretz moledetecha, what did Abraham respond? Nothing. He just went. She's asked, do you want to go? And she says, I'm going. There's something there. There's something there. And then to give you a sense of who she is, you want to come in? You want to come in? Reba, come in. There's a place to sit. Greg left. He left you a place to sit. Reba, come and sit. Come on. We're mishpacha. You got to sit. You have a place at the table. Right? Turn to page 138. This is one of my favorite. This is the great love story. The only thing is, I need somebody to sing me the Lawrence of Arabia theme. Camels crossing the desert in the sunset of Arabia, right? Then Rebecca, Rivka, and her maids arose. They mounted the camels. They followed the man. The servant took Rivka and went away. Meanwhile, this is so cinematic. Meanwhile, back in Canaan, here's your answer. Isaac had just come back from the vicinity of Beer Lahai-Roi, for he was settled in the Negev. And Isaac went out walking in the field toward evening. Right? The Hebrew is Vayetze Yaakov lasuach basadeh. What is lasuach basadeh? Walking would be different. Walking would be lalechet basadeh. Lasuach either means to stroll, but lasuach also lashon sicha, to have a conversation, to meditate. Right? To meditate. He's out there meditating. That's where you get the tradition that Isaac created the service of mincha, right? Right? Because you have a service late in the afternoon, which gives you a moment of meditation before the day is finished. Just before sunset, you daven mincha. That's where it comes from. So here is this boy, and unlike Abraham, he's not fighting wars against kings, and unlike his son Jacob, he's not out there raising millions of kids. What is he doing? He's out by himself, meditating in the field. This is, again, this image of a man of depth who's trying to figure out his world. And then, of course, the beautiful thing is, raising her eyes. Isaac was out walking the field. He looked up and he saw the camels. So this is so beautifully cinematic. We see it through his eyes. Look, camels, right? Now we switch back to the camels, you know. The cinematic cut is raising her eyes. Now we're looking at her. Rebecca saw Isaac. She sees him, this beautiful young man, meditating deeply in the field. And she's so taken, the Hebrew says, Vatipol me'agamal, alighted from the camel. No, she fell off the camel. The first documented case of a girl falling in love. Some enchanted evening, you will find a stranger far across a crowded desert, and you'll fall from up your camel, right? Now, even though she's a klutz, no. The sense of a passionate woman, of a woman she sees him and she's just entranced, she's infatuated, she's taken with him. There's something like really beautiful about this, right? Like, whoop, right, just like that, right? So she's the girl who has the guts to leave her family and go to this wasteland, and then she looks up and she sees him, and all it takes is one brief vision. I think you better move over here. Janine, move over here because this is a fire exit, and if the house is burning, I want to be able to get out of here. Okay. Right. One brief moment, and whoosh, she's smitten. That's what she starts with. Now, watch what happens to her. Something interesting happens to her. What happens to this beautifully passionate young woman living with this deep, brooding, intellectual man? Okay, Jerry, did you want to add something? A moment ago I stifled.
Yeah, well, I think the rabbis of the Midrash went even farther than you.
Yeah, I know.
On page 137, where the family says, okay, we'll ask her. And then the rabbis imagine their tone of voice when they say, you want to go with this man?
Yeah.
They don't say that. They say, as the rabbis translate it, you really want to go with this man?
Right. This man, right?
And her answer is also reformed by the rabbis in the Midrash. And so what she says is, whatever you think, I will go.
Okay.
So she is not just not following the family line, she is defiant in her individual autonomy.
Yeah, she has an autonomy that very few women in the whole Bible ever betray. But here I want to show you. But I want to show you what happens to that, though. Something kind of sad happens to that, and watch what happens to it. Okay? Yes, please, Raksha.
Just one more thing.
Yeah, good. We're in.
Lasuach basadeh.
Mazel lasuach basadeh. Yeah.
It's okay. I mean,
Yeah.
but you skipped lifnot erev, which
Yeah.
indicates the mincha time.
Yeah, lifnot erev. It's evening time, right? Yeah. Yeah, but see, then if you really want to get into the midrash of it, you see, so you start taking these words apart, right? Mazel lifnot, lashon panim, right? The language of the face. Lifnot means in the face of. And you have this idea that, poor Isaac closes his eyes, and whose face does he see? Right there. The face he sees when he closes his eyes is the face of his father on the day his father tried to kill him, right? And Arev, once the Arev is, Erev means evening time, but Arev also means mixed up. It's not day and it's not night, it's not light, it's not dark, it's not life, it's not death. Here is the man who lives in the space between life and death. You see? And watch what happens to her. She catches it. Watch how she catches it. So she's barren, he prays, she gets pregnant. Noch mazel tov, let's go buy a couple of bassinets. But it's a tough pregnancy. Now, even a tough pregnancy, what does a woman say when she has a tough pregnancy? So what? Chunky monkey, right, exactly right. But even a tough pregnancy, you say, it's a tough pregnancy, it's going to come to an end soon enough. I give thanks for the baby. But look what she says. She says something really interesting. She says, V'taher Rivka ishto, right? V'yitrotzitzu habanim b'kirba. The boys are mixing it up inside of her, right? V'tomer, she says, just 5 words. Im kain lama ze anochi. Im kain, if so, lama ze anochi. Translate, Janice.
Why me?
Yeah, why me? And even more than that, I think it's deeper than that. Lama ze anochi means, why do I exist? Why am I alive? Look at the way the translator translates, why do I exist? He says, I'm better off dead. I mean, there's almost a death, you hear the death wish in that? Like, I'm, and it's, you say, wait a minute, but you wanted to be a mama, you're going to be a mother. Where is the motherly nothing? It's this, and you get a sense that maybe his brooding, his depth, his depression has now leaked into her. Now watch, it's not the only time she's going to say that. There's another one that she's going to say. Let me find it here. Right. No, that's not it over there. It's over here. Another time that she's going to say it, if you look at 2746. So I'll give you the page number. 2746 is at the very end of the Parsha. Look at page 160. Nope, 1459. Page 159. This is at the end of the story, right? Esav, angry that he missed the blessing, goes off and does what his father and his grandfather told him never to do, marries the women of the land and brings them into the house, right? And look what Rivka says at the end. Look at verse 46 on 159. Rebekah said to Isaac, right? I am disgusted with my life because of these Hittite women. If Jacob marries one of them, then I'll kill myself, basically, right? What good will life be to me? Twice in her life, she utters these words, why am I alive? Why am I alive? And that's not what you have expected from this woman of such passion and such love. In a certain way, she's sort of imbibed his, his sort of death wish, this sort of death consciousness. And there's something missing in her, something that gets beat out of her from this marriage. Yes?
You lost me. What is the woman of the lamb, did you say?
Land, not lamb. I like lamb. It's expensive, but it's nice. No, they don't want their sons marrying local girls. They want their sons marrying girls from the old country, okay? You send Michael Corleone back to Sicily to marry a good Sicilian girl. You don't let him marry some American girl, right? Right? Unfortunately, the Sicilian girl gets offed and Diane Keaton ends up as the wife. That's also scripture. One year we're not going to do Torah. We're going to do The Godfather. We're going to do The Godfather like we do Torah, like scene by scene, you know? Yes, please.
For all the criticism of her, we're not the Jewish people without her.
Ah.
More than Abraham.
Ah. Thank you very much, Douglas. Turn back to 147. Now we got to read this story straight. So we've looked at Isaac and we've looked at Rebekah. Now we got to look at, and by the way, so Rebekah, tell me a quick thing about Rebekah's family. Who's her father? No. Bethuel. Who's Bethuel? That's Abraham's great nephew, right? Bethuel is the son of Nahor, who's the brother of Abraham, okay? Who's her brother? Lavan. What do we know about Lavan? A no-goodnik, says Mort. A no-goodnik. This is very good, right? Right. This is I like that. Such a great phrase, right? Yeah, he's Lavan. The word Lavan means white. It means blank. It's blank, right? It's the person whose emotions you can't read, right? Anyone ever bought a used car? Right? And you just can't read the guy's face about whether you just got rooked or whether you got a great deal. Like, I can't believe that's what you're charging for this car. There must be something wrong with it. No, it's a wonderful car. You know, we only drove it on Sundays to church. That's all, you know. Or to Shabbos to shul, you know. It's a good. All right, come with me. Ready? So the boys grew up. The first one emerges, red hair, like a hairy mantle all over. I'm on 147. Middle of the page. So they named him Esau. And then his brother emerged, holding to the heel of Esau, so they named him Yaakov. Isaac was 60 when they were born. Hairy. What is a hairy man? What does that represent? Hairy red man. Yeah, there's something wild about that. Right. In mythology, hair represents wildness. Passion. Red represents blood, life, passion, emotions, right? When the boys grew up, Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the outdoors. Ish sadeh. Ish sadeh, right? But Jacob was a mild man. That's really that sounds like Clark Kent, right? Right? V'Yaakov ish tam. Ish tam yoshev ohalim. A kid who stayed home. So you have one kid who goes out and one kid who stays home. What does Jacob do for a living? We know what Esau does. What does Esau do? He's a hunter. He's a hunter. He lives in nature. He pits his cunning, strength, and power and courage against those of animals, kills the animals, takes a certain joy in the killing of the animals, and brings them home for the family. You get a sense of his character? He is the hunter, the hairy man, the man of nature, the man, you get it? And hunting is an interesting, I taught this once and I said something disparaging about hunters and someone came to me afterwards and said, no, it's not that at all. Hunting is an honest profession because it's you against the animal, especially in those days before you had AK-47s, you know? I mean, today hunting is nebuch, you know? But you're dealing with man and knife against animal. There's a certain purity in the contest. But it's strength, but it's all these sort of animalistic urges. It's his animalism against the animal's animalism, right? It's that level of thing. And you're beginning to get a sense here that it's not just about these boys, this is also a meditation about the people Israel and their relations with the outside world. Who is Jacob? We know two things about Jacob now, right? Or three. A, he's smooth. What does smooth mean? Not animalistic, that's the sure, right? He is ish tam. Tam doesn't mean mild-mannered. What does tam mean? Simple. In the Seder, you have a kid who's tam. What does that mean? Is that simple meaning stupid? What is simple? What is it? Ish tam. What does that? Tell me about that. Go ahead.
He's a man he's content with himself. I mean, he's
No, you got it right. His inside and his outside match. What does a hunter have to do? He has to hide. What does a hunter have to do? Camouflage. A hunter is cunning. Ish tam can't be cunning because his inside and his outside match. Right? His inside, he betrays his emotions. Right? He betrays it. You ever gone in? I mean, the only thing I'm thinking about buying a car, so this is on my mind. But you go to a car dealership, and you feel like you're being hunted. I don't know. Anyone here a car salesman? I deeply apologize, but you walk on the lot and you feel like you're in someone's sights. And the guy walks up and he's wearing a suit and he's so good. He's like, hello, welcome to shysters of Toyota. And can we let me show you a few things? You're gonna love it. And you just feel like this man's inside and his outside are completely different. He's cunning. He's shrewd. Me, I'm like, oh, cool, what a lovely car, What do I, and so it's ish tam, inside and outside match. Inside, what you see and there's a certain authenticity on the one hand, and a certain naivete on the other. Now, just for a moment, I don't want to insult anybody. I'll insult everybody. What the hell? Think about how many functions in a human society require that you conceal your feelings and your reality and put on a mask. No, politicians, right? No, but seriously, and by the way, not just you could say lawyers are all liars. But even a doctor, imagine the physician who has to go in and say, and what he's really thinking is, oh my God, right? I mean, I have a friend, I'm a cancer patient, and I go see my doctors several times a year, and because I'm okay, we'd end up talking more about them than about me, and the doctor will come in and say, I just had a really hard case, and I'll always say, how did you tell them? How do you communicate? And he says, it's really hard because I have to appear to be in control. And when you see a really hard case, it's really, here's this guy who spends his life fighting this disease. He can't walk in the room and say, oh, listen, go write your will. I mean, he can't say that. He has to give the impression of being in control. Many things we do in life require that kind of, that was the snake, remember? That was the nachash in the garden. His inside and his outside, he was shrewd. He was arum. The inside and outside don't match, right? That's the cunning of the hunter. And one second. So we get ish tam, that's number one. The second one is yoshev ohalim. What is yoshev ohalim? Yeah, he sits in his tent. What does sits in his tent? What does that mean? We don't know what he does for a living. He's a tent sitter. I don't know if you can make a living doing that. He'd be a dog sitter, I suppose, but what is it? Now, that's what the tradition said. He went to study, he went to the yeshiva of Shem and Ever. So while Esav is out hunting and beating down bears and alligators, here is Jacob sitting and studying Gemara, right? Studious man. He's domesticated. In some ways, he's feminine. There's something feminine about smooth, simple, homebody, right? There's something effeminate, we'd say, in our culture, right? Right? It's an interesting contrast, right? And then the next scene, I know you want to talk, but I want to get through that story really quickly, and I apologize. So when they grew up, Isaac favored Esau because he had a taste for game. Jacob favored Rebekah. We could spend a lot of time on that, but let's pass through it. When Jacob was cooking a stew, cooking a stew? A man cooking a stew? Jewish men don't cook. Doesn't he know that? Right? And he's cooking a stew, and Esau came in from the open famished, and Esau said, give me some of that red to gulp down, for I'm famished. The Hebrew, you have to learn Hebrew, because the Hebrew is this clipped, simplistic Hebrew of a guy who doesn't do a lot of talking. Hunters are by themselves. They don't schmooze. Jacob is a schmoozer. Esau is a hunter. You know, Esau, you got this image of Esau and his father sitting at the campfire every night with a beer, right? How'd it go today, son? Good. You catch anything? Uh-huh. Tough fight, huh? Yeah. Yeah, me too. That's it. That's a whole night's conversation for a man and his son, right? How about them Vikings? I think they have a chance. How many points? 16, right? That's it. Men don't talk. Men grunt. Men commune without, we have telepathy, right? We have telepathy. We sit, we stare into the fire, we drink the beer, good beer, yeah. You know? Men don't, you know, it's women who teach us how to talk. Sometimes, you know. Sometimes. No, it's true. You know, they marry, and a year later she comes to see me. She says, he doesn't talk to me. Right? Why not? Because that's his nature. I mean, so this is this sort of, this laconic, that's the fancy word for it. Laconic. What's the common woman's kvetch, right? He doesn't tell me what he's thinking. He crawls into his man cave. We don't have the fire anymore. We have large television sets, right? We don't go hunting anymore. We have fantasy football, which is hunting, basically. It's the same thing, you know, and or the stock market, right? And this is what men do.
Women hunt too. No, I'm
That's another story. I don't.
looking for a spouse.
We're getting to that in a minute.
And vice versa, and then we're not the
Hang on. We're gonna wait. There's devious women coming. Don't worry. There's a beautiful midrash about this. There's a beautiful midrash which I found when I was reading this week. Why was Jacob cooking? The midrash. Why was Jacob cooking?
He was hungry.
No. There's a beautiful midrash. Abraham died, and Jacob was cooking the stew for the Shiva. And when Esau comes in, and he asks him, what are you making? He says, our grandfather has died. And Esau is crushed by that, because Abraham was his idol. And Abraham was the man who had transcended nature, transcended humanity. He was the Superman. Abraham was Esau's object of worship. And when he finds out that even Abraham was mortal, even Abraham could die, Esau thinks to himself, there's no meaning to anything. Esau's cynicism, says the Midrash, is a reflection of his grief for his father Abraham. And that's why he says this. When he says this, give me the red stuff, for I'm famished. The famished is, my life has no meaning anymore. If Abraham can die, if even Abraham is subject to death, then there's nothing left for me. He says, sell me your birthright. In other words, give me your share in the blessing of Abraham. And Esau says, what do I need the birthright for? If he can die, it doesn't protect me. It doesn't give me anything. And he says, swear to me first, and he sold him the birthright. So the Midrash gives Esau an interiority, which the Bible doesn't. The Bible wants to show you an Esau who's two-dimensional. He's just a man of his desires, his impulses. But the Midrash gives you a backstory which is remarkable. He was stricken with grief over the death of his grandfather, who he always associated as the one who was above the circumstances of human limitations. And now Esau becomes a cynic. And the cynic is conveyed in the last line on page 148, which you can't read in English. You have to read in Hebrew. And I apologize if your Hebrew's not up to this, but you got to read it. I'll just do it with you word by word. Yaakov natan le'esav lechev unizid adashim. Jacob gave to Esau bread and stew. And now we have 6 verbs with no interruption. Vayachal, vayesh, vayakom, vayelech, vayibaz Esav et habchara. He ate and he drank, he got up and he left, and he spurned the birthright. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 verses, sorry. 5 verses. It's like in one action. You ever watch a man consume a meal? Like not like enjoy it, like just wolf down, and even use a wolf. We use the phrase wolf, right? He wolfed down the meal. There's no humanity left in him. And the Midrash is beautiful because the Midrash doesn't say it's just because he has a flaw in his character. It's because when he saw that Abraham himself was subject to the forces of the world, he lost his desire to live. He lost it. There's only one thing left in the world that he cherishes, and that's his father's blessing. And that's what we're going to get to in the next 2 minutes. So quick comments, please. Yes?
Birthright's a status. Can you sell in the ancient world a status?
Good question. Next question. You asking me? No. I think Jacob was screwing with him. I think Jacob was just messing with him because you can't. He's the firstborn. You can't sell that. But Esau is either too stupid, or rather, I think he's too distracted to realize that he couldn't sell it. But Jacob wanted to demonstrate to both Esau and to his father and to himself that Jacob wanted to demonstrate that Esau wasn't a man worthy of Abraham's mantle, worthy of Abraham's blessing, because he has no interiority, because he has no inner life, because he's all one giant stomach, right? A man who's a giant stomach, a man who's the consumer of the world, a man who only eats, consumes, and tastes the world and has no sense of its inner beauty or its spiritual purpose, can't be Abraham's heir, right? We spoke about this. He does this to food. He does this to women. You're going to see later, Esau marries all these women, because he becomes just the consumer of the world, and women are commodities to be consumed. Or if you want to be deeper, the Midrash has it deeper. He's searching for some answer to the question, if Abraham could die, what's worth holding on to in life? And he seeks it in food and drink and sex. But I think he lives with the hole in his soul. He's the addict. He's the addict. He can't get fentanyl, so he's got all this other stuff. This is a person who doesn't have a soul, whose soul has died when Abraham died. Yes, please.
How do you square the idea of Jacob being so simple with what he does?
So I'm about to get to that. Thank you for asking. I'm about to get to that. We have to get to that today, otherwise the day will be...
Quick question, when you were talking about
Yeah.
the salesman and not putting your emotions out there, we all do that. Anybody who deals with the public,
Yes,
we do that with our family.
we do that with everybody. Right, but isn't that an interesting part of being human? On the one hand, we prize sincerity, honesty, forthrightness, truth, and on the other hand, all of us know that certain human transactions demand concealing the self, concealing your real feel. As I said, I have Rachmanis on my doctor who has to deal with very, very sick people and has to control his feelings. Listen, you don't think it upsets him? This poor guy never practiced medicine until he was 36 years old, right? He was the smartest kid in every school he ever went to. Junior high, high school, top of his class in University of Michigan, top of his class in medical school, a year of internship, 3 years of residency, and 4 years of fellowship. Before he could practice medicine, he spent his whole life learning how to save life. And when he meets the disease he can't overcome, you don't believe that crushes him? That's why he wants appointments with me. No, I get these cards from Kaiser all the time saying the doctor wants to see you. I said, oh, am I sick? He said, no, the doctor's sick. No, I'm telling you, it's the truth. We have lovely conversations. We sit together like, I'm sitting here in my gatkas, because we have to make some appearance like we're really doing medicine. So I take my clothes off and I'm sitting here in my underpants, right? And I'm saying to him, it's not your fault. No, Mamish, I got to look him in the eye and I got to say, it's not your fault. And he'll look at me with this look, and he has a name for this. It has an F in it. The effing disease, he says. He says, I have so many drugs. I have so many therapies. I have so much science. Why can't I save this person? And I said, because you're not God. And he says, you're right. And I say, you can't blame you. You can't carry. This is real. This is real. You can't carry this because the person after me needs you. So like, get it out. Come on. You want to hit me? Hit me, you know. He said, I don't want to hit you. I said, yeah, you do. You did it twice. You get it. But this is what it takes to be a physician. This is what it takes to be in any profession. This is what even good, I mean, I'm not just saying, we smarmy politicians and salesmen, yes, but even in people who do good in the world. I'm a teacher. You don't think that there's sometimes I wanted to smack a kid? Big mouth, smart aleck adolescent. You don't think I want to let him have it, You can't do that. You hold it back. I mean, you're right, every human interaction, but how much of it? And at what point do you come out and be yourself again? And what happens to the part of you which you repress? I think this is a fascinating, we can spend another hour on this one. Yes, Ronnie.
Do these characters have any idea of their importance?
Do they have any idea of their importance?
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think? I think that they have, here's what I think. Abraham is the revered patriarch of this family. And I think the idea of gaining the blessing, the mantle of Abraham, is something that everybody in the family wants. That they do get. They have a sense that God is involved in this somehow. That they do get as well. But remember, they're characters in a story. We're the ones who give them importance, right? Because they're our ancestors. They're reflections of us. All right, let's get to the story you all came for. Judy, you get 2 seconds. Go.
So metaphorically, Isaac and Jacob are two sides of us. They're twins, one of them.
Metaphorically, in myth, a twin is a half a person.
Yes.
And you'll see that in a moment, right? Page 153, ready? This is the story you came to hear today. When Isaac was old and his eyes were too dim to see, he called his oldest son Esau and said to him, my son, and he answered, here I am. Whenever the Bible introduces that call and response, it means what's about to happen. Pay attention. It's a big thing. That's Ron's question, right? I mean, this is a father talking to his son, and he says, Benin, he says, Hineni. This is call and response. You hear it? He says, I'm old and I do not know soon how soon I may die. Take your gear, your quiver and bow, and go out into the open and hunt me some game. And bring me a dish, prepare me a dish such as I like, and bring it to me to eat so that I may give you my innermost blessing before I die. Breaking bread is the oldest human ritual. And everything that's important in life happens over the meal table. Because the meal table, the dinner table, is where you construct character, identity, and reality. So if he's going to bless him, when is he going to do it? Over the dinner table, right? Dinner tables are significant. So he says, make me dinner. We'll sit, we'll eat, I'll bless, right? So he goes out, Esau goes. Rebekah had been listening as Isaac spoke to his son Esau. Everybody can go, Good, thank you. When Esau had gone out into the open to hunt game to bring home, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, say, Thank you. I overheard your father speaking to your brother Esau, saying, bring me some game, prepare me a dish to eat, that I may bless you with the Lord's approval before I die. With the Lord's approval? Were those words used in Now, my son, listen carefully as I instruct you. Go to the flock, fetch me 2 choice kids. I will make them a dish for your father such as he likes. Then take it to your father to eat in order that he may bless you before he dies. Is this going to work? Jacob says to his mother Rachel, his mother Rebekah, but my brother is a hairy man, and I am smooth-skinned. If my father touches me, I shall appear to him as a trickster and bring myself a curse, not a blessing. So first of all, what's wrong with that? Yeah, he's not objecting to what he's about to do. What's he worried about? I'm going to get caught. I'm going to get caught, and Dad's going to like crush me, you know. Dad's prayer brought me into the world. Dad's prayer can send me from the world. I will be a trickster. Now, by the way, it doesn't say, I will be a trickster. What does it say? I will appear to him as if. It doesn't matter to him what position. He somehow is not, he's not self-aware enough to realize what he's about to do to his poor, blind, dying father. It's only what consequences are going to be. What's going to come of it? I will appear to be a trickster. And he's only worried about touching him. But his mother said, your curse be upon me. Every Jewish mother, right? Just do as I say and go fetch them. Now the question is this. They're going to have two questions through this whole narrative, which we're not going to have enough time to go through. But number one is, was Isaac really intent on blessing Esau with the mantle of Abraham? No, I'm going to ask you that. And number two, does Isaac know who he's blessing? Or is he tricked? Is he fooled? Okay, just look at ask those two questions, and I want to get to that as we get to the end. He got them and brought them to his mother. His mother prepared a dish. Rebekah took the best clothes of her son, Esau, which were in the house, and gave them to Yaakov. She covered his hands and the hairless part of the neck with the skins of the kids. He put in the hands of her son the dish and the bread that she'd prepared. He went to his father, and he said, Father, Avi, Vayomer, Hineni beni, Hineni, mi ata beni. Look at page 156. Mi ata beni. Now, I told you 100 times, I'll tell you again. The Bible was written in such a way that when you have a question, that's what the whole narrative is about. The question should be italicized. It rises up out of the narrative. The purpose of the narrative is to give a context for the question. The question is what the narrative is there for. In the Garden of Eden, the question is, Ayeka, where are you? In the Cain and Abel story, it's Hashomer Achi Anochi, am I my brother's keeper? Right? At the burning bush, Moses is going to ask, Mi Anochi, who am I? And here the question is, Mi ata beni. Who are you, my son? Who are you? Who are you? What kind of man do you want to be? Who are you in the world? What's your legacy? I know who Abraham, my father, was. I know who I am. Who are you? Who do you want to be? Who do you want to be? And then it goes on. I'm Esau, your firstborn. I've done as you told me. Pray, sit up, and eat again. And Isaac said, how'd you succeed so quickly? And he said, because the Lord your God granted me good fortune. And Isaac said, come close that I might feel you, whether you're really my son Esau or not. What an odd, who else would he be? You see? But it's really not that. It's I want to touch you. Because, I don't know you very well. You can imagine that Jacob and Isaac never really spent time together. Jacob was the mama's boy. His mother knows who he is. But his father really never spent time with him. This is their first time in a real encounter, and it's in the dark. I want to touch you because my eyes don't work very well. I want to see who you really are, and I have to touch you to find out who you really are. And he drew closer, and he says the voice is the voice of Jacob, and the hands are the hands of Esau. And that would cause an alarm to anybody, but that's exactly the point of this, right? And he says, are you really Esau? And he says, I am. And he said, serve me the game. Now, game tastes different than domesticated meat. So if he didn't know before, when he took the first forkful, he would have known. But it doesn't matter. Look at the blessing. Page 157. I want to look at really quickly 3 blessings. We don't have time, but we'll do it anyway. Look at 157, right? Listen to the blessing. May God give you of the dew of heaven and the fat of the earth, abundance of new grain and wine. Let people serve you and nations bow to you. Be master over your brothers, and let your mother's sons bow to you. Cursed be they who curse you, and blessed be they who bless you. What did he get, and what didn't he get? What did he get? What did the blessing give him? And what didn't he get? Well, let's try this. Let's try a little comparison. Put a finger here and turn to chapter 28, which is on page 160. Put a finger here and look at page 160. Ready? Jacob is leaving home to go back to the old country, escaping from his brother, looking for his wife. Look at chapter 28. Isaac sent for Jacob and blessed him. He instructed him and said, don't take a wife from the Canaanite people. Go to Padan Aram, the house of Bethuel, your mother's father. Take a wife there from the daughters of Lavan. Look at verse 3. May El Shaddai bless you, make you fertile and numerous, so that you become an assembly of peoples. May he grant you the blessing of Abraham to you and your offspring, that you may possess the land where you are a sojourner, which God assigned to Abraham. What's the difference between the two blessings?
No children either.
In the first blessing, the one he got in Isaac's blindness, he got Esau's blessing. Esau's blessing has nothing to do with Abraham. It doesn't mention Abraham. It doesn't include the things that Abraham was blessed with. What was Abraham blessed with? The land and progeny. Lots of kids. Look at what we get here. The dew of the heaven, the fat of the land, the abundance of new grain and wine. That's not an Abraham blessing. That's an Esau blessing. Let people serve you and nations bow to you. Power. Has that ever been a Jewish blessing? Did any Jewish parent ever say to his kid, rule the world, kid? Genghis Khan's father told him that. Hannibal's father told him that. Julius Caesar's father told him that. Did any Jewish parent ever say to his kid, rule the world, son? No. That's Esau's blessing, right? Let your mother's sons bow to you, right? What kind of mishpacha is that, right? Cursed be they who curse you and bless those who bless you. That isn't Abraham's blessing, but it's generic. Jacob got Esau's blessing, and here I think is the secret. Isaac never intended to give Esau the blessing of Abraham. He knew who his sons were. He knew who his sons were. He was going to give Esau the blessing that Esau most wanted. The fat of the land, the power, temporal power. He was going to give Jacob the blessing of Abraham, and that's what he ended up giving him. The problem was Isaac had this plan all worked out, and then Rebekah screwed it up. She switched the boys, and in switching the boys, Jacob ended up with Esau's blessing and Abraham's blessing, and then you get the final scene of this is quite remarkable. Then let's just take a peek at this and we'll call it a day. Right? 158. Right? Or actually 157 at the bottom. No sooner had Jacob left the presence of his father Isaac, and Isaac finished blessing Jacob, that his brother came back, and he too prepared a dish, and he said, let my father sit up and eat. And the father said, who are you? You hear the who are you? How many times have we heard, who are you? We keep hearing, who are you? Because this is a story about revealing character. And he says, I'm your son Esau, your firstborn. And Isaac was seized with trembling. Who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me? And I ate of it. And I blessed him. And look at the next phrase. I blessed him. And now he stays blessed. What do you mean he stays blessed? A blessing given in subterfuge? Shouldn't they be able to reverse that? Any good lawyer could take care of that, right? Right? I mean, no. These blessings stay blessed, right? And Esau heard his father's words. He burst into wild, bitter sobbing, and he said to his father, bless me too. Now you feel sorry for him. Nebuch, right? Bless me too. Bless me too. And he said, your brother came with guile and took away your blessing. He was named Jacob to take me twice, right? And and he says, and he added, have you not reserved a blessing for me? Have you not reserved a blessing for me? So here's what happens. It's such a wonderfully complicated story. You have this brooding Isaac who lives on the edge of death. You have his wife Rebekah who starts out with all this passion, but life beats her down. But she has enough strength to do this one last act of manipulation. You have Jacob who discovers a capacity, but it's not a healthy capacity. It's a capacity to manipulate. And the question of, who are you, my son, is going to trail him through the rest of the book of Genesis. Because that's our question. He's our ancestor. Who are we? Who are we, and what are the blessings that we crave? And you have Esau in the end, who asks this question. And Esau in the end, I think, is the tragic hero of the story. Because what does he say to his father? What does he really say to his father? Who told you you only had one blessing? I think, I said this last year, but I want to see it. I think this is a story about a structural flaw in monotheism. One God, one blessing, two brothers. That's suicide. That's suicide. One God means everybody gets blessed, not just one. It's a complete misunderstanding of the monotheism to think that one God means one blessing no matter how many brothers you got. Isaac had it right. He had a blessing for each of his sons. Unfortunately, the manipulation turned it upside down. But one God means everybody gets the blessing they need, not just the one blessing. Because if you say one God, one blessing, one chosen people, what you're literally saying, without getting political, is there's not enough room in this earth for both of us. And if you say that to somebody, what do you end up with? An enraged Esav who will spend the rest of his life seeking vengeance. That is a formula for suicide. That's a mistake in the way that we read monotheism. It's a mistake. And the Torah is saying, please, we've made this mistake over and over and over again. When are we going to learn? When are we going to learn? That's, I think, how the Torah's portion this week ends. Have a really good Shabbos. Have a happy Thanksgiving. I have to run. Hey, Neil, it's not wonderful.